Does it cost too much to live in Maryland in 2024? And how does Maryland rank against the other 49 states when it comes to cost of living? Well, that's what I'm going to cover in this video so you can determine whether or not Maryland is the right place for you to move to and whether or not right now is the right time to move here. So let's just jump right in. Hey everyone, my name is Eddie Brady and I'm a realtor here in Maryland. And if this is your first time visiting the channel, thank you for being here. I make videos like this every single week about the best places to live in Maryland and everything you should know before moving here. So make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. So Americans are now more concerned with affordability and cost of living more than any time in recent history. And this is because in 2021 and 2022, we saw extremely high levels of inflation that caused nearly every good and service to increase in price. In fact, the last time we saw inflation this high was in the 70s and 80s. So many of you watching were not even born yet when we saw inflation levels this high, including myself. And if you couple this with the most unaffordable time to buy a house in history, it's no wonder that people are trying to find the best states to move to with the lowest cost of living. And if you're considering moving to Maryland, which is why you're watching this video, then it's important to know where we stand on that list on the rankings and whether or not now is the right time to either buy or rent a home if you do decide to move here. So let's dive into the latest cost of living report from Forbes.com for 2023 so that by the end of this video, you have a better idea of how living in Maryland will impact your bank account. Starting off with the overall rankings, Maryland's total cost of living is the 7th highest in the entire country, ranking just behind Alaska. And that's because it costs on average $48,235 to live in Maryland per year. So with Maryland being more expensive to live in than 43 other states, you'd expect that you don't have that much money left over at the end of every month, but that's not the case. Maryland ranks as having the 9th highest disposable income at the end of every year at $21,515. This is after subtracting that cost of living from the average salary of a worker in Maryland. And this is because the average salary here is the 6th highest in the entire nation at $69,750. And a lot of the reason that this income is so high is because of the number of state, local, and federal jobs that we have here. Over 500,000 residents in the state of Maryland work for some form of government, and over 160,000 of them work for the federal government. Maryland ranks as having the 3rd most federal employees in the nation, with the majority of those employees being employed by the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Defense, and the Department of Veteran Affairs, or the VA. Maryland also has a significant number of intelligence community jobs, and these are both federal employees and contracting jobs, so these jobs pay very well. A lot of them require a high security clearance, so with that, the employees at these agencies get paid a very handsome salary. And even with the government jobs helping to prop up the average income in Maryland, they still only account for 18% of the total jobs in Maryland. And that's because we have nearly every major industry represented in Maryland. There are a ton of great jobs in Maryland, and we have a very strong local economy. And speaking of going to work, how much of your income should you expect to spend on transportation to and from work here in Maryland and everywhere else in between? Well, on average, Marylanders spend $5,488 per year on transportation costs, ranking them at the 11th most expensive transportation costs in the entire country. And a fun fact here is the difference between the cheapest state with transportation, which is Rhode Island, and the most expensive state for transportation, which is Hawaii, is $3,000 a year, which means the state you live in can change how much you spend on transportation a month by more than $250. And while transportation costs are a very important part of determining where to live, I think the most important thing to factor in is the housing costs. And this is going to be the most important part of the video. Maryland ranks as having the 16th highest median home prices at $405,562, which is pretty good considering the rest of the cost of living here in Maryland. And this brings up another important question. Is it more cost effective to buy or rent in Maryland? Well, although we are 16th highest in the nation with the mortgage payments, we're actually 6th highest in the entire nation in our rental costs at just over $1,700 a month. So if you're looking to live in Maryland for the long term, and by long term, I'm talking about 5 years or more, I highly recommend buying a home in Maryland. That's because your rent's going to increase year over year, where your mortgage payment may not. Maybe your property taxes do, but the mortgage payment itself will remain the same, where if you're renting, 100% of that cost is going to your landlord every year. So if you're planning on staying here for 5 years or more, I highly recommend buying a home in Maryland. And why do I say 5 years or more? Well, if you look at the historical data for home values in the US, even if we have a crash in home prices, it takes on average about 5 years for that correction to be fully back to normal or above where it was prior to the crash. So if you are considering living somewhere long term, you have to keep in mind that real estate prices over time appreciate. Obviously, just like the stock market, there are ebbs and flows, but if you plan to stay in a place for 5 years or more, it really puts you in a more safe place for your home being an investment for you. But in some cases, it really does make more sense to rent here in Maryland versus buying in Maryland. And a lot of my clients that I meet from here on YouTube decide to rent in Maryland first before buying a home. And a lot of that is due to them wanting to figure out what area they want to live in. Maybe they like a city that they see on YouTube, but when they move there, they decide, well, maybe I want to move to the city over here. So to some people, it makes way more sense to rent first and buy later. It also makes sense to rent versus buy if you plan on living in Maryland for less than 3 years. And this is because it's just unlikely that you could rent your house for a profit with the way current interest rates are. Now in 2020, with the interest rates as low as they were, it made more sense. The people that secured homes in that time could probably move out and rent for a profit right now. But at the end of 2023, going into 2024, with rates in the mid 7s, going up into the 8s, it just doesn't make sense that you could be profitable on your house, moving out and using it as a rental. So if you're going to be living in a home for less than 3 years, the reason I say that you should rent instead of buy is because it's unlikely that you will make up for your closing costs, and it's unlikely that you'll be able to rent for a profit. So once you do own a home in Maryland, how much will it cost you to live here? Well, the monthly housing expenses in Maryland are the 5th highest in the country at $1,818 a month. And this amount doesn't factor in your mortgage payment. This is accounting for things like utilities and the monthly maintenance of having a home. So once you're living in your home and you have all your utilities out of the way, well, how much is it going to cost to fill your fridge? Well, the good news here is that Maryland ranks pretty much in the middle of the pack with food expenses at number 23 in the country. And the annual cost for food here in Maryland is about $4,260. And healthcare here in Maryland will cost you about $10,340 a year, which sounds very high, but Maryland is ranked at number 16 on the list for the highest healthcare expenses. So yeah, it's not middle of the pack there, but it's also not the worst. But a place where Maryland does not rank so well is on income taxes. We're ranked at having the 5th highest income taxes in the entire nation. Marylanders are paying over $6,300 a year on just the state income taxes. Now, it's not accounting for everything else. It's not accounting for your federal income taxes. That's just state. And that's why a lot of people in Maryland have a problem with our income taxes here. We rank very high on that list. So with not ranking so well on the cost of living in so many areas on this list, why do people still move to Maryland? Well, I think it's because of the disposable income that we talked about earlier in the video. After all, disposable income determines your quality of life. How much money do you have left over for vacations or high quality food or things that you just want to buy? I think that determines where people really want to move to. Now again, this is just a cost of living video about how Maryland ranks against all of the other states in the US for cost of living. There are so many other things you should know about moving to Maryland, and that's why I've made over 100 other videos about the best places to live, the market updates, the best neighborhoods, what you should know before moving here. So if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to go over to my channel and dive into that information. And if you need any further detail on any of my videos, please reach out to me. I am happy to expand on everything I talk about in my videos. And if you are considering a move to Maryland, whether that's 6 months away or 6 weeks away, I'm happy to help. It's never too soon to have a one-on-one call with me. And the easiest way to do that is just go into the description or the comments and click on that link to schedule a one-on-one call with me so that I can get a plan together for you and your move. And if that's you, I'm excited to hear from you. And as always, if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe so you stay up to date on all of my videos about moving to Maryland.